That music you just heard, I wrote that. Why did I write it? Because it was fun to write. My name's Cameron Watt and I am a musician. What does this sentence mean to me? Well, for me, the sentence I'm a musician means I'm a pianist, performer, amateur mathematician and software engineer, and a composer of computer-assisted algorithmic music. I specialise in iterative processes in algorithmic composition with the aid of computers, more specifically the uses of the Python 3 programming language and how this can be used to encode a musical process. Some of my major influences include Milton Babbitt, Yanis Xenakis, Wendy Carlos, Arnold Schoenberg, Anton Webern and Alban Berg. My recent passion has been applications of serialist methods to the tuning system of 16-tone equal temperament. This is a fascinating area in the field of microtonal music, which I seek to contribute to, potentially through PhD study in the future. That takes a lot of time and energy and effort. So yeah, I bust my ass making music, I have a great time doing it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And here, in this video, I'm aiming to provide a discursive look at some of the issues around music technologies and music theory, which seems to be becoming an increasingly polarised and contentious topic, owing to the emergence of certain technologies, namely artificial intelligence, which some people are hailing as the future of music, while others are saying it's a threat to the future of music and musicians. So what I'm going to do here is offer my own perspective on some of these issues, articulate my views on music technology and music theory, and hopefully make a case for why music theory is fun to learn and essential for any serious musician. So the first thing I wanted to discuss was the emergence of artificial intelligence techniques in the music industry and the apparent problems this presents for music theory. Take, for example, programs like Suno, which are doing the rounds on Facebook. The musician, educational YouTuber and bassist for the band Sungazer, Adam Neely, made a video about this which I really recommend checking out. This is a program where you simply type in a prompt for the computer describing the music that you want, and the computer program, which is trained on a massive database, simply gives you an imitation of some music that supposedly meets the criteria that you want. The specific use cases which I would critique here are the cases where this is intended as a kind of substitute for actually doing the work. And there is a disturbing trend of anti-intellectualism where people are saying, why learn music theory when you can just use AI? Indeed, why learn music theory? The year is 1969. You're at Woodstock. And Santana are playing Soul Sacrifice. And it's that moment where the guitarist is playing these licks. He's going da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and he looks to the guy on the organ, and the guy on the organ joins in. He goes da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da, and it's this really beautiful, simple, wonderful moment of interplay. They're absolutely fantastic musicians, and it's a really incredible shared moment of authentic human connection where they're working together musically, and you can see from their faces they're having so much fun doing it. And here's the thing, you can't have all of that joy, connection and wonder without music theory. Because think about it, even if those licks are improvised, they're improvised within a chord progression. The bassist is doing a very simple repeating bass line, a riff. If this were happening in a classical context, we would call that an ostinato, but here we would call it a riff. All of that is music theory. You want Freebird? G, B flat, C. That's a chord sequence. Sorry, you can't have Freebird without music theory. There is no such thing as a free lunch. You could even do what Bill Bailey does and do musical comedy. Even that has music theory behind it. Even the ridiculous music of Anal Cunt has some theory behind it. Even if you had a bunch of keyboards and you put them all on demonstration at the fastest possible tempo all at the same time, that's hilarious, and it's an example of how music brings you joy and laughter. And all of those tunes you hear on your keyboard when you put it on demonstration, they all have theory behind them. Why learn music theory? Because it brings us joy and laughter and community, and it increases our knowledge. Remember that word? Knowledge. It could also be argued that music can be a way of taking something that's really difficult for yourself and doing something to reclaim that. And if that's what you're interested in, look no further than Scatman John. And he had a stutter, and he found a way of taking that and turning it into something really positive through the music. He would go, da 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 boppy 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 da 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 boppy ba 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 do. Ah, fantastic music. Can't get enough of Scatman John. You listen to Everybody Jam by Scatman John, and that scatting that you hear and the trumpet, that is a call and response. That is music theory. Even if you're not that into jazz, personally I'm more of a contemporary classical sort of guy, Scatman John is nonetheless a really excellent musical role model. Need I go on? Now, something that I'm also going to mention here is the benefits of the social dimensions of music making, ensemble musicianship and choral singing. Now, I must confess here that while I have sung in choirs before, I don't have nearly as much experience in choral singing as I do in piano and composition. But I will add that I have never sung in a choir and regretted it. You meet fellow musicians, you have a laugh and chit-chat, you make music together, and you're part of a wider musical community that is bigger than yourself. And that's very positive for your mental health. Why else is it worth learning music theory? Well, one of my earliest childhood memories is of listening to Vladimir Ashkenazy playing Beethoven's Sonata No. 26, Opus 81A, Les Adieux. There are 3 movements: the departure, the absence, and the return. And what I would do is listen to the opening of the 3rd movement, the return, over and over again. It has this wonderful melody which starts in the right hand. And then it's passed to the left hand, and then you have these counter melodies coming in, bum ba 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 bum bum, in the right hand. And then we have this moment in the bridge section between the first and the second subjects in the exposition, where you have these broken chords in the right hand going all the way up the keyboard, and then a descending scale passage all the way down. And then you do it all again. And hearing that moment musically as a child, it's a moment of sheer ecstasy and rapture. And listening to that was something that inspired me to want to play the piano and to be a musician. And eventually, after over a decade of committed practice, I learned how to play this particular piece, Les Adieux, all 3 movements, and I had a sense of accomplishment from that. And here's the amazing thing: why stop at Les Adieux? You could also learn Scriabin Sonata No. 5. You could learn the Berg Sonata. You could learn Chopin studies. You could learn Liszt's Transcendental studies. You could learn a Bach partita. You could learn Milton Babbitt's 3 compositions and have even more of a sense of accomplishment. And that's just the performance part. If you still aren't convinced that music theory is worth learning, go and listen to Beethoven's Les Adieux. That could be a starting point. Don't let anyone tell you that a working class person can't listen to Beethoven. You can't have that moment of sheer ecstasy, inspiration, rapture, and that sense of accomplishment without music theory. Music theory also helps us to be critical thinkers. Take, for example, the Bach St. John Passion. Some people might have concerns that the text is a little bit problematic because of this element of, is it anti-Semitic? So it's very of its time. That doesn't mean that it's not a compelling piece of music. You would find far more anti-Semitism with a figure like Wagner, and that's a whole critique and a whole debate that we could have. Why learn music theory? Because it helps us to think critically about the music we listen to. Another benefit of music theory, it helps us to become critical thinkers. Proponents of this Suno software say that it accelerates the writing process. Many people say that the speed at which they're producing these songs, you get this rapid output that means that you can supposedly go from writing a small number of songs a year to a huge number of songs a year. Here's another issue. If the songs themselves are simply recycled garbage, in which the musician doesn't have much real input into the creative process, then where does the actual interest lie? You're not actually writing anything. The person behind this software claims that he wants to model the music industry on the video game industry and capitalise on a notion of musical interactivity. It's like he wants to invent new consumer behaviours and sell a kind of marketised musical interactivity as a Meaningful consumption experience. A truly nauseating term that conjures up images of Mark Zuckerberg. Excuse me while I vomit. Here is the issue with this. With video games, people play video games until they beat the game and they eventually lose interest until, let's say, a sequel comes out or they buy another game. Musically, if you're just going to lose interest in it eventually, what's in it for the musician? When I was a youngster, I had this kids' music making program called EJ. People say EJ is a toy. And from a certain perspective, it is, right? Because it's for kids. You've got this bank of loops, and you're dragging these loops into the timeline. It could be drums and percussion, it could be guitars, and so on. Now, for me, when I had this EJ thing as a kid, yes, it's a toy, it's not the real thing, but also it gives you a wee bit of a taster, a sort of dipping your foot in the bathwater of what mixing in a DAW could be like. And I really enjoy playing around with this thing because there is actually some kind of creative input in the process. That's something that EJ has going for it. What does Suno have going for it? It's not even a loop system. If what you're looking for is something that gives a kid a chance at exploring music making in a very accessible way, EJ has that going for it and Suno doesn't. As for Suno, I wouldn't use this product in my creative process even if you paid me to use it. This is simply an unsustainable and unrealistic business model because ultimately, music is not just a kind of button bashing without thinking about it as you might do in a video game. Unless Suno can make a significant change to the product design and do something to course correct, they're going to have a very hard time selling their product. This product is so awful that it's actually got people saying, why learn music theory when you can just use AI? That is a disaster for the music industry. Historians and musicologists in the future are going to look back on this and be like, what on earth were they thinking? Ultimately, there is no such thing as a free lunch. In the long run, sooner or later, Suno's market is just going to evaporate. It's a fad that will appear and then collapse. There are far better ways of encouraging kids to get involved with music making. So, why learn music theory? I asked the Indian composer Adieux Chakraborty this question, and here is what he had to say. For me, it is simply essential if one wants to express oneself in a musically cogent manner. One might ask why we study language formally, yet knowledge of language enriches communication and gives it precision and elegance. One could say the same about mathematics. Music theory provides a similar framework for music. Without it, musical creation risks becoming little more than a collection of vague intuitions. For me, music is not something that arises purely from instinct or feeling, though many anti-intellectual strands of thought insist that it does. There is almost always an underlying internal logic and intelligibility in music, and music theory helps bring that logic into sharper focus. As someone with a master's degree in statistics, I see a clear parallel with mathematics in our field. Mathematics provides the rigorous framework that allows statistical ideas to be articulated precisely. Without it, statistics would risk becoming little more than a collection of untidy observations about how the real world behaves. Mic drop. In my next video, I'm going to give you either a whistle-stop tour of my Python workspace, which demonstrates what is, for me, a far more stimulating approach to musical interactivity and iterative processes than simply prompting a machine with text. Or, alternatively, I might do a performance video of myself playing my Sonata for 16-tone piano on a dual launchpad system, or even a score follow-along video. Haven't quite decided, but subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and you'll get one of those on your homepage or your notifications, whatever it may be. Finally, let's hear a reprise of that fanfare you heard at the beginning, just for fun.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal?